Hi, I'm Vitaly Tron and welcome to Mastering Yi2, a video course by Pact Publishing. I have been a web developer for about 7 years. I have been working with the Yi2 framework since the last 4 years. I have developed several complex and highly responsible web apps related to medicine and bookkeeping. I have also my own open source projects based on the Yi framework. The purpose of this course is to help you develop customized and reliable web applications that can withstand a heavy load of users using the power of Yi2 framework. To show you the Yi2 framework in action, we will create the web application. Let's call it High Load. We will improve this application in each section through the whole video course, step by step, using various components of the Yi2 framework. In the first section, we will learn how to work on the High Load application in a team using a Git repository. In the second section, we will make our website responsive and we will add some components to our website using the Twitter Bootstrap framework. That's included in Yi2. In the third section, we will have a look at the security of the application. We will create role-based access control system for our web app. Also, we will encrypt and decrypt some of our data using the Yi2 framework components. In the fourth section, we will add the caching feature, which is extremely important for our application, and we will learn to work with cache components. Also, we will use other storages for cache and user sessions data to make our web app even faster and reliable in the fifth section. The power of this framework allows us to do so just by changing a few lines of code in web app config files. Then, in section 6, we will use different full-text search tools to find the desired information from within a large amount of data in a flash. Finally, to improve the reliability of High Load even more, in the 7th section, we will add Codeception testing framework to our web app. We will create our own tests, and we will see how they work. Note that we will use Windows OS and NetBeans 8 IDE in this video course. Now let's talk about prerequisites for this course. First of all, you need to have some basic experience in PHP, MySQL, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You need to have the PHP Composer tool installed. Also, basic experience with MVC design pattern and Yi2 framework is desired. Also, I have a small disclaimer. The world of web programming is changing permanently, so a few months after this video course has been created, something may change. And only your willingness to update your skills every day is the way to your success in web development. Let's begin the journey now. See you in the next video. Hello everyone. Let's start with the first section of this course, i.e. Git version control system. First of all, let me tell you why using version control system is so important in any framework. When you work on High Load and other complex projects, you sometimes need to cancel the changes you made previously in several files. Or you need to keep different versions of the same files at the same time. It may waste your time, and also you may forget to change some files and the data integrity will be lost. Even more, if you work in a team, this is usual for large projects, you need to keep a synchronized projects versions for each team member. How do you solve this problem? Version control system is a special software class which was developed to help us in this problem, and Git is one of such systems. So in this section, we'll have a look. What is Git version system, how to use it, and how to configure auto-deploy in our repository, and save a lot of time on routine deploy actions. Now, let's have a look at video 1.2, Introduction to Git. In this video, we'll have a look at Git version control system. We'll learn the advantages of Bitbucket repositories, and finally, we'll create empty repository on Bitbucket. Let's go. We will install the advanced Yi2 template. First of all, let's install the advanced Yi2 template. Let's copy the console command and paste it into our console. Change the folder name and press Enter. Composer will do the rest of the job. OK, now we run the command init for our new application. Cool, we've now installed it successfully. First of all, let's have a look at web page git-scm.com/about. There is brief information about Git, the most popular version control system around the world. Git has many advantages, such as it is free even for commercial projects. Git is small, very fast, and distributed. It also has high level of data integrity. Feel free to visit the site anytime you want to have a detailed explanation. Now we move on to Bitbucket. Let's have a look at bitbucket.org web service. Bitbucket is one of the largest web-based hosting services for source code. One of the most important Bitbucket advantages over the other source code hosting services is that they provide private repositories to small teams for free. Small teams can make up to 5 members. A lot of people have been using Bitbucket for private or open source projects for years. So let's create a repository on Bitbucket for our high-load Yi application. If you don't have a Bitbucket account, pause the video and create one right now. Trust me, it's very easy. Now that you have an account set up, let's create a new repository. Click Create button at the top menu bar. Choose Create Repository option and you will be moved to bitbucket.org/repo/create page. We specify here repository name high-load. Description: Yi2 application video course. Access level. We create private repository now, but if you create open source project, unselect this box. Forking. Only private forks. Repository type. Git. Project management. Bitbucket provides wiki and bug tracker services for free. So we select these checkboxes. Language, PHP. HipChat. We don't need HipChat notifications. Submit this form. That's it. The repository was created successfully, and now we can use it. This brings us to the end of video 1.2. In this video, we had a brief overview of Git, we had a look at Bitbucket, and we created a new repository on Bitbucket. In the next video, we'll learn how to use the repository we just created. Thanks for your attention. In our last video, we learned what is Git version control system. We also created a new Bitbucket repository for our Yi2 application. Let's move on to the third video of this section, i.e. learning the most used commands in Git. In this video, we will have a look at how to init new local repository and commit your updates, how to push the updates to Bitbucket repository, and how to pull updates of other developers from Bitbucket to our local repository. Let's assume that you've already installed your Yi2 application with the advanced template and you named the project high-load. Note that we use IDE NetBeans 8 for our high-load project. So first of all, we need to create local Git repository in our project folder. How to do that? We just need to right-click on the project, high-load, and then choose Versioning, Initialize Git Repository. NetBeans asks as where to create the local repository. We create it in the main folder of our high-load project. Now, as you can see, all the files of the project were marked as new. because there are no files in our new local repository now. So we need to add all the existing files and make initial commit to our local repository. How to do that? Simple. We need to right-click on the Highload project and then choose Git Commit in the menu. Git shows us the warning message. Commit head does not exist. But this is okay, since there are no commits in our repository yet. Click OK and close the message. All the existing files were marked as new in this commit. So let's type the comment initial commit and add all the new files into the local repository. Click the commit button and that's it. Now we need to push updates to Bitbucket repository, so our project will become accessible to all other team members. Let's right-click on the Highload project and choose the option Git Remote Push. Since this is our first time push, we need to configure access params to our Bitbucket repository. NetBeans will remember all Git params, so working with the remote repository will be much easier. Let's specify the Bitbucket repository name, the username and password for Bitbucket account. Then we press the next button, select Master Branch, press the next button again, and then Finish button. Push process has started. Entire project is now uploading to Bitbucket repo. New window appears with message about remote master branch. Yes, we need it. Refresh Bitbucket repository overview page. And now we see the repository dashboard. Let's move on to Commits page. There is a single commit, which is the initial commit we just made. Let's have a look at it. All files were marked as added. Let's return to the commits list. Wow, somebody else has pushed his own updates already. The list tells us that only homepage header was changed to Highload, according to the name of our project. Let's pull this update. We right-click on Highload project and then choose Git Remote Pull. All params connected to Bitbucket repository are saved by NetBeans, so we don't need to enter them anymore. Press the Next button and note that the current master branch is already marked, since it was updated by other developer. Press Finish button and pay attention. How our page header changes to Highload, according to the latest update. Note that your work should always start with pull command, since you need to pull all updates from the repository before you start the work. And you need to finish your work by pushing your own updates to Bitbucket repository. And of course, you may pull and push updates more often. That's it for this video. In this video, we have learned how to create a local repository, how to commit updates, and send them to remote Bitbucket repository with git push command. We also saw how to receive latest updates from remote to local repository with git pull command. In the next video, we'll learn how to configure auto-deploy with Bitbucket hooks to your VPS. Thanks for your attention. In the previous video, we learned some of the most used Git operations. Let's move on to the fourth video of this section, i.e., auto-deploy with Bitbucket hooks to your VPS. When you work on a medium or large project for a long time, sometimes you need to update the live server, where your application is placed on. Such updates are not very long actions, but these updates do take significant time. Definitely, it is better to automate them to avoid wasting our time for menial tasks such as these. In this video, we will use my own VPS and domain name, dolocal.org. With VPS, we mean Virtual Private Server, but you can also use a different server depending on the hardware you have. In this video, we have a look at how to create Bitbucket hooks, how to add specially deploy script to your VPS, and we'll see how this feature works finally. Let's have a look at the web page. jonathannicol.com. This is a great article on how to configure auto-deploy for our project. It doesn't require any special software or complex configuration. The described decision is very good for medium projects with short deployment iterations. However, for complex and large projects, you probably will need a more complex decision. So, to configure auto-deploy, you need console access and rights to execute console commands on server side. Most of all, shared hosting will not provide such rights to you. You may use this feature at least on VPS plan. First of all, we need to add SSH key according to points in the article. Note that passphrases should be empty in this case to allow console commands to be executed automatically. Also note that if you have not yet installed your Yi2 application with advanced template to your VPS, you need to do it. The installation process is very similar to installation to your local machine. Then we clone repository from Bitbucket and enter checkout command. It is time to add your deployment script to VPS. We go to the settings of our repository on Bitbucket. Click the webhooks option and press button Add Webhook. In the URL field, we'll specify to update our script, for example, deploy.hiload.dolocal.org/bitbucket-deploy.php. Save it. Note that it's highly recommended to check the client IP in the very beginning of the script to keep things secure. Subdomains hiload.dolocal.org and deploy.hiload.dolocal.org were created especially for this video. Then we copy PHP script from article and place it into the respective PHP file. Note that file name should be exactly the same, as we pointed out in Bitbucket repository webhook. Recently, Bitbucket has changed the API, so post array is empty now, and we may remove all lines where post array is used. And now we test our auto-deploy feature. Make simple changes to homepage of our Hiload application. First, second heading, and third. Save the code, commit updates, commit it, and push them to repository. A few seconds, and it works. No need to waste our time to deploy updates anymore. They will be deployed automatically. In this section, we have looked at an overview of Git version control system. We have tried some most used Git commands, and we have added auto-deployment feature to our VPS. In the next section, we will have a look how to combine Highload with Twitter Bootstrap framework. Thank you. Hello everyone. In our last section, we learned how to use Bitbucket repository for our Yi2 application. Let's move on to the second section of this course, i.e. Twitter Bootstrap. Developing a fancy, stylish and responsive design is a difficult and time-consuming job. Even more, we need to achieve great results on each of the major browsers and various screen sizes. In this section, we will discover how to do these hard design jobs quickly and easily with Twitter Bootstrap framework. We will have a look at how to use Twitter Bootstrap framework appropriately, how to add Bootstrap components, and how to use Bootstrap JavaScript features in our application. Now, let's have a look at video 2.1, combining Highload with Twitter Bootstrap framework. In this video, we will discover how to create responsive design using cross-browser Twitter Bootstrap framework. This will make the front page of our application look great in any screen and any browser. Note that though Yi2 application already have Twitter Bootstrap on board, auto-generated views doesn't have too many examples of proper Bootstrap usage, doesn't explain Bootstrap's grid system, and doesn't use Bootstrap's JavaScript widgets. The purpose of this video is to fill this gap and discuss all this in detail. How to achieve that? First of all, we have a look at screen sizes predefined in Bootstrap. Then we'll discover what block styles are most suitable for our blocks. Finally, we combine things together and that's it. Let's have a look at the web page getbootstrap.com/CSS. This is the most important page to understand what responsive design with Bootstrap is. In brief, Bootstrap uses 12-column grid to build responsive web page. You just need to specify appropriate block class to define how many columns the block should use. And this block width may change depending on what screen displays the page. Note that to define block width, it uses the same column amount on all wider screens, until this amount will be changed for wider displays. You can read all details on your own. Now let's try it. Let's have a look at the home page. I have changed header titles and links below to make them clearer. Since all descriptions are always different, let's change their content a bit. I just copied the last sentence in the first description. Also, let's copy the last header and description. Since we need 4 blocks in the row, not 3, change the header number, save our code and refresh the page. The 4th block moved to the new line, since there is no space for it on desired line. So we need to reduce the width of all 4 blocks. It is very simple. Just change the block class colLG4 to colLG3. So all our blocks will use not 4 but 3 columns in our 12 columns Bootstrap grid. Save this code and refresh the page. That's it. This screen width is called large in Bootstrap. And now let's have a look at how our page will be displayed on narrower screens. We just reduced the browser's width. This screen width is called medium in Bootstrap. When we make the browser narrower, each block expands to the whole row and becomes too wide. We need to fix it, so that 4 blocks should be on the same line, even if the screen is not so wide. It is achieved with Bootstrap classes. We just need to change the block class from colLG3 to colmd3 for the first block, second, and then third and fourth. So the blocks will use 3 columns in 12-column grid on medium screens, as well as on large screens. Save the code and update the page. Yes, that's much better. Let's reduce the width of our browser even more. Such screen width is called small in Bootstrap. As we see, in narrower screens our blocks are still too wide. But we can't place 4 blocks on the same line, since they will be too narrow. Let's place 2 blocks on the same line. Since we need 2 blocks in one line, each block should use 6 columns in our 12-column Bootstrap grid. And for small size screens, we need to add the class colsm6 for each block. Note that we need to leave the colmd3 class as it is, since we need 4 blocks on one row for medium screens, and for large screens collg* class will be used. Save this code and update the page. It works. However, now we have a trouble with third and fourth blocks. Third block should be placed directly under the first block, but it is placed under second block. Why? The matter is, the first block has a bigger height, so the third block can't stick to the left side of the container, under the first block. How to solve this issue? It is easy with Bootstrap. You just need to add the block with clearfix class after the second block. Clearfix is a special class, like linebreak for the browser, and moves all the next elements to the beginning of the next line. Let's do that. Save it, and update the page. Great, it helps. Now let's look at how our page will be displayed on smartphones. This is the Bootstrap extra small screen size. It looks great. Let's return to standard browser size. And now we have the next hurdle. Clearfix block still moves all blocks after it to new line. How to solve this now? Simple. We just need to use the Bootstrap hidden classes for medium screen, hidden MD, and for large screen, hidden LG. Let's do that. Save code and update the page. The job is done. Our page looks great on all screen sizes. It took a little time and effort, but we have finally achieved the goal for this video. Specifically, we have learned screen sizes used in Bootstrap, we discovered how to use Bootstrap block classes correctly, and now we can develop responsive design quickly with Bootstrap. In the next video, we will learn how to add Bootstrap components to HighLoad. In our last video, we learned how to create responsive design for web page with Twitter Bootstrap framework. Let's move on to the second video of this section, i.e., adding Bootstrap components to HighLoad. It's not easy to create stylish components which look great on all the major browsers and various screen sizes. In this video, we will discuss how to do this difficult job easily with Twitter Bootstrap framework. How to achieve that? In the beginning, we will have a look at components in Bootstrap. Then, we'll try to add some icons, as in symbols, to our homepage. Finally, we'll add some labels to our homepage, and that's it. Let's move on to the web page getbootstrap.com/components. This is the page where we can get information on how to use Bootstrap components. There are sections such as glyph icons, drop-downs, button groups, button drop-downs, input groups, labels, and many others. You can read all the information on your own. And now let's try to use some components. Let's have a look at homepage. Note that I have changed the green button text. And now we'll try to add icon right hand. The right hand icon to the links at the bottom of the homepage. How to do that? That's easy with Bootstrap. We just need to copy the icon HTML code and paste it into the needed place. Note that Yi2 comes with a bunch of handful widgets, classes and methods to generate Twitter Bootstrap components, but they have poor documentation for this. Instead of copying pure HTML code from Twitter Bootstrap website, you need to use these classes and their methods instead. So, we'll select the code related to icon and place it into the home page. We have added the star icon. Let's change it to the right-hand icon. It will be more suitable for Read More title. In the icons table, we can find the right-hand icon and the respective class below. So let's change glyphicon star class to glyphicon hand right class. Save the code and refresh the page. Great! The icon for the first article link has been changed. Note that if we change the button size, font size and icon sizes change respectively. If we change the color of the button, font color and icon color change as well. This is the great power and convenience of Twitter Bootstrap Framework. So let's make our links as primary links. Change their color to blue. And let's make them small. So we change the link class from btn default to btn primary and add btn sm class to each bottom link. For second link, third link, and then the fourth one. Save this code and update the home page. We also add the glyph icons. Update the page? Yes, great. As we see, button colors and button sizes have been changed. In addition to this, button font color and size have changed. Even the icon color and size have been updated. Now, let's add one more button to the fourth article. We imagine that the author of the fourth article allowed showing some of his details. We need to add one more button to the article and combine these two buttons together. How do we do it? We can use button groups classes to get things done. So instead of HTML paragraph tag P, we place div tag. Specify the btn group class, group role, and some area label to label our new button group. Close this group with a /div tag. Then we add the second button to this group. Just copy and paste the first button, then change the btn primary button class to btn default. Change the glyph icon hand right class to glyph icon pencil and read more label to author. Save the code and update the page. As we see, two buttons were combined into one button group. We just needed to change some classes to do this job and it works. Finally, let's add some hot news red label for second article. We just need to use the label class in our home page. Copy desired piece of text from Bootstrap Components page and paste it to our homepage code. Specify label text hot news. And that's it. Now we can commit the updates. In this video, we have learned some Bootstrap components. We have added icons, used button groups, and labels to make our homepage even more beautiful. In the next video, we will learn how to use Bootstrap JavaScript features in HighLoad. In our last video, we learned how to add Bootstrap components to our application. Let's move on to the third video of this section, i.e. using Bootstrap JavaScript features in HighLoad. Twitter Bootstrap Framework contains some JavaScript features which drastically improve users' experience of the web page. You can embed these plugins with just some lines of code. In this video, we will look at JavaScript features. Then we'll try to embed Bootstrap Modal Window and Bootstrap Popover feature to our home page. Let's have a look at web page getbootstrap.com/JavaScript. All you need to know about Bootstrap JavaScript features is described there. For example, you can use message windows, drop-downs, scroll spy, toggleable tabs, popovers, etc. If you want, you can grasp all things on your own. Let's try some of these features. So here is the large green button, About Project, at the center of the home page. Let's change this green button so that a click on it will launch a modal window about the project instead of opening a new page. To do that, we need to copy its code from Bootstrap JavaScript page and paste it into our homepage code. Then we add About Modal, ID, and other required attributes to the main modal block. Change modal window title and content to desired text. Remove one button and rename the other one. These are the only changes we need to make. Now our job is to add modal window launch to About Project button click. How to do it? We just need to add some attributes to the desired button. Let's add data toggle and data target attributes to About Project button. Save code and update the page. Now let's click on the green button. It works! With only a few rows of code, we have implemented complex JavaScript plugin, and it works like a charm. This is the great power of Twitter Bootstrap framework. You can add complex features with just a few lines or even few symbols of code. Now let's add some hint to our homepage. Let's say all interested users have a possibility to view some details about the author of the 4th article, since that author allowed to view such details. We will show hint with author details to any user who clicks on Author button at the bottom of the 4th article. How to do that? We just need to embed JavaScript popover feature to our homepage. We simply add 4 attributes to Author button: data toggle, data placement, title, and data content. Such attributes pop over to desired object. Save the code and update the page. Click on Author button, but the popover does not work. Why? If we read Bootstrap JavaScript page carefully, we will find a warning that we must initialize popovers on our own. So let's add respective code to homepage. Copy and paste desired JavaScript code there. Save code and update the page. Great! Popover works now. When we click the Author button, popover with author details appears. We have achieved all the desired results. Now we can commit the updates. In this section, we learn to work with Twitter Bootstrap framework, embedded into the Yi2 framework. We have developed responsive design of homepage. We have added some Bootstrap components to homepage. And finally, we have implemented some Bootstrap JavaScript features to homepage. In the next section, we will look at security moments and access permissions. See you in the next section. Hello guys. In our last section, we try to work with Twitter Bootstrap, embedded into the Yi2 framework. Let's move on to the third section of this course, i.e., security moments and access permissions. One of the most important features of high-loaded and complex web application is its reliability and stability. Millions of people and robots around the world may visit our web application every day. We need to create a robust security system to satisfy our visitors and make our website work like a charm. More precisely, in this section, we will learn how to implement role-based access system, RBAC, in high-load, how to improve security on form submission, and how to work with passwords correctly in high-load. Now let's see video 3.1. Implementing RBAC in high-load. We will look at how to develop complex, reliable and clear access control system. Such security systems will make our web application stable and credible. How to do this? First of all, we'll look at all access components of Yi2. Then we will create users, roles, and permissions. In the end, we assign users to respective roles and the job is done. We can find there is a great explanation of Yi2 access control components at the page www.yi-framework.com/doc-2.0/guide security authorization.html. Thus, we can use either access control filter, ACF, or role-based access control, RBAC. ACF is more suitable for smaller sites, which do not require complex access control system. RBAC provides much more flexible access. Feel free to read the basic concepts to understand it clearly. There are two components in Yi2 framework to manage in RBAC. PHP Manager stores all the info in .php files, and DB Manager stores all the info in the database. Storing the user rights in .php files requires each change to RBAC system or user roles to be committed to Git and then deployed to VPS, automatically using hooks or manually using FTP, which is not too convenient. That is why most developers choose to use DB Medium for RBAC data storage. Let's use DB Manager component. I have previously added 3 users with usernames admin, moderator, and author. They all have their respective rights on Highload News site. We will use a hierarchical structure of users' rights, so they will have rights such as unregistered user can view posts and categories. Author has unregistered user rights, and he can also create posts. Moderator has author rights, and in addition, he can update and delete posts, create and update categories. Admin has moderator rights, and he can also delete categories in addition to that. Let's move on to the Building Authorization Data section on Yi's page. I have already created authorization tables in database with migration, which are specified on the same manual page. I then copied this code to /console/controllers/rbaccontroller.php file and made some changes. For example, I have renamed the user roles to author and moderator. I have added permissions for categories as well. This is the function init, which adds roles, permissions, and relations between them into database. There is also a function called assign, which assigns users to their roles so that our RBAC is ready to use. This rbaccontroller.php file will be used to run commands from the console. Let's see how it works. But before that, let me explain the code which I have created beforehand. I have changed one link in the main layout. Now it is called permissions and points to check permissions page. Then I have added auth manager to /common/config/main.php file. So this auth manager will be used in the front end, back end, and console applications now. The default role is guest. Each user who visits our site is assigned this role and its permissions automatically. Also, I have added action check to /backend/controllers/sitecontroller.php. This is the page which tests all our permissions for all the users. First of all, we take all the users and all the permissions from the database. Then we create an empty user to also test unregistered user permissions. Finally, we send all data to the view check permissions and render the page. In the view, we have 2 nested loops, outer for the users and inner for permissions. If some user has a permission, we show green, yes, title, and red, no, vice versa. So now, let's go to test our permissions. Click on Permissions link at the top of the page. There are just 4 users and no permissions. Why did we get this result? Because we haven't created any permission yet. Now we run the command ye rbac/init. Update the page. Great, it works. All permissions appear. However, all users have the same permissions. Is it correct? Of course not. Every user should have permissions according to his role, which, for our convenience, have the same name. To achieve that, we just need to assign the created user roles to users. This action, assign, in the rbac-controller.php does the entire job. We select 3 user roles from database, then select 3 users, and finally, we assign the roles to the respective users. And now we run command ye rbac/assign and update the page. Well done! The job is completed successfully. Our access control system is properly configured now. This marks the end of the video. In this video, we looked at access control components in Ye2 framework. Then, we built hierarchical structure for RBAC for our application. And finally, we assigned users to respective user roles. In the next video, we will see how to improve security on form submissions in HighLoad. See you later. In our last video, we worked with DB Manager, the Ye2 RBAC component. Now we move to the second video of this section, i.e., adding security on form submission in HighLoad. The world is wide, my friends. A lot of people will use our web application. Some of them, probably, will not be so honest. Maybe someone will try to falsify some data or request and try to cheat some information out of our web application. Fortunately, Ye2 framework has enough features to decline such cheated requests. We will have a look at some of them in this video. In particular, we will see how to escape user input data when we show it, how to sanitize user input, what CSRF attack is, and how to prevent it. You can find all the main instructions on how to improve security of your application at the webpage www.yeframework.com/doc 2.0/guide security best practices. Why do we need to filter user input data and escape its output? What is SQL injection, XSS, or CSRF attacks? We live in a real world and need to know it. Ye2 framework helps us a lot to make our application reliable and avoid all of these attacks. I have created CRUD operations for user database table using G module beforehand. Now we can create new users and also view, update and delete them. So let's imagine that some user signs up on HighLoad. But instead of typing the username, he copies the image tag of Ye framework logo and pastes it into the username field. After he submits the form, we can have a look at his profile. But we see Ye framework logo type instead of username text. This means the user can insert any dangerous tags, iframes and other, into his username field, and they will be performed on the browser each time, when this user's profile will be opened. If the user inserts any malicious script there, it will be executed as well. How to avoid this situation? We just need to filter out dangerous characters in user input. we wrap username output into HTML : encode function. That's it. Save the code, update the page, and now it works. Now the user's profile page is safe. Well done. However, it is much better if we remove all the HTML tags in the user data even before we save any user input data to database. How to do that? We just need to use HTML purifier class to sanitize the user input data. Note that HTML purifier is quite slow, so it is not recommended for view generation. Using it in the form submission process is a much better way. So now, if the user provides the input as an iframe tag with link to a malicious script and some content, the system removes this tag from username. Only the text without any tags is left. Note that we still need to encode all user input data, even when we sanitize such data. Also, note that encoding and sanitizing are different processes. Sanitizing is cleaning user input. It removes the input code, characters, or text that are denied. Encoding is converting special HTML code to HTML entities, so the browser just displays them instead of executing them. Save the code. Now, on the same web page, let's see what CSRF attack is. This sort of attack means that some hacker or attacker may hack into your Yi2 application and might execute some malicious code. Fortunately, Yi2 framework has enough features to prevent such a situation. And this CSRF attack protection is enabled by default. Let's open the source code of login page. As you can see, there are two text fields. Remember me, checkbox, and one more hidden field with some hashed data. What is it? That is the CSRF token, the basis of CSRF protection. This hidden field is added automatically to each form on website by default, and this token value is changed on each request. When the user submits the form, Yi2 framework automatically checks if this token is equal to other CSRF tokens in the user session, user cookies, or other places. If these tokens are different, Yi2 framework throws bad request exception before the processing of controller action starts. This brings us to the end of video 3.2. In this video, we have learned how to escape user input data, how to sanitize it, and how to prevent CSRF attacks. In the next video, we will learn how to work with passwords in a correct manner in HighLoad. Until next time. Hello everybody. In the previous video, we learned how to work with user input data on form submission. And now we move on to the third video of this section, i.e. working with passwords correctly in HighLoad. It is hard to imagine complex websites without encryption features. We need to encrypt user passwords and other significant data, which the user trusts to our website. We need to check data integrity, generate random numbers and strings, etc. I am pleased to inform you that the Yi2 framework has even special component security to help us get things done, and we will look at it in this video. We will learn in detail how to create and validate passwords, how to encrypt, decrypt data with secret key, and finally, how to encrypt, decrypt especially important data using algorithms for password encryption. Let's move on to the web page www.yiframework.com/doc2.0/guide security passwords. You can find all these details there. How to work with passwords, how to encrypt and decrypt data, how to generate random values, how to keep data integrity, and so on. And now, let's try to work with these functions. First of all, let's have a look at /common/models/user.php file. This is their user model, shared between front-end, back-end, and console application. Thanks to our amazing Yi2 Advanced template, there is nothing to do with password generation and validation. Everything we need is already done. We need to just explore the code and understand how the functions generate password hash and validate password are used. Also, it is worth to open frontend/controllers/sitecontroller.php and see how the user model is used in controller functions action signup, when we create a new user and generate the new password, and action login, when we validate the username and password. Try to sign up to our highload and check the new password in user.passwordhash field. Now let's open any user profile web page. We will encrypt and then decrypt some information, for example, username. How to do that? We create a random secret key in /frontend/controllers/usercontroller.php controller and pass it to view. We need the functions encrypt by key and decrypt by key to do that. Let's add them to our /frontend/views/user/view.php file. Save the code and update the user profile page. It works. Username is encrypted with some secret key and then successfully decrypted. Note that we need exactly the same secret key to decrypt the data, which was used to encrypt it. Also note that the secret key is changed on each page request. Encrypted data is changed as well, but decrypted data does not change and is equal to the original data. Despite the fact that these encryption algorithms have high cryptographic resistance, they are fast and the time taken to generate the page is not changed too much. We can see that in Yi debug panel at the bottom of the page. But for especially significant user data, we may use the same algorithms, which are used for password generation and validation. They are deliberately slow to prevent brute force and dictionary attacks. But how to use such algorithms? We just need to change encrypt by key to encrypt by password, and decrypt by key function to decrypt by password. Change them, save the code, and update the page. It works! Well done! Now our web page encrypts data using the most complex and time-consuming algorithms that are available to PHP. Look how long the user profile page takes to generate. Only 2 functions, encryption and decryption. Took 1 second to get executed on my machine. That's why we need to use them rarely, only in special cases. Note that with PHP 5.5, you will have access to the best of all the cryptography algorithms available to PHP. In this section, we have learned how to develop complex RBAC system with hierarchical structure. We worked with user input data on form submit, and finally, we learned to work with passwords, encrypt and decrypt data with Yi2 framework features. In the next section, we will have a look at caching features in Yi2 framework. See you in the next section. Hello guys, in our last section we worked with RBAC components and some security features in Yi2 framework. Now let's see the 4th section of this course, i.e. caching. Each server has its own limit for resources. Often, our web application should generate the same data to create web pages. However, sometimes this generation is difficult and time-consuming for the server. If visitors make several requests per second, this may overload our server and slow down its work. So what can we do? How to resolve this glitch? Caching is the solution. We can save recently generated data in some storage and then retrieve it each time we need it. Fortunately, we can do it very easily with Yi2 framework. In this section, we will learn some techniques on how to reduce server load drastically. We will learn how to store some data in cache and how to retrieve it later. How to store an HTML fragment in cache, or the whole web page, or even all HTTP requests, and finally, how to combine or compress JS and CSS files before sending them to the client. So let's move on to the video 4.1, improving the performance of high load. We will learn how to increase performance drastically by reusing recently generated data, instead of processing it again and again on each user request. Cache system will make our web application faster and will help avoid server overloading. How to get things done? Yi2 framework caching components make it simple. We will learn how to store recently generated data in cache and retrieve it later, how to cache table schema, and how to use caching for database queries. In our previous video, we worked with username encryption and decryption on user profile page, and we used randomly generated secret key for that. Now, just to see how caching works, let's cache our random key for 10 seconds, so that it will not be generated on each page reload. The secret key will be generated again only 10 seconds after it has been cached. Now, first of all, we read cached random key from cache. If there is no data with random key, or it has expired, cache always returns false value. If cache returns false, we generate the secret key, store it in the cache with random key for 10 seconds, and then use it into the view. Now, if you update user profile page every second, you can see that the generated key is not changed, and it updates just 10 seconds after it has been stored to cache. Well done! Note, the secret key cached for all users now. But if you need to cache some value for each user separately, just add user ID to the key of cached data. So, for example, we need to use random6 key to store secret key for user ID 6 and retrieve it. If you want, you can also add additional params to your cache key. You can find all the additional information on the webpage www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0 guide caching data. Each time when you make a database query, Yi2 framework reads the table metadata beforehand. This helps Yi2 framework to prepare the query. If your application often uses database, such reads of table metadata may make your application slower. If your database structure does not change too often, we can just cache all tables, metadata, and that's it. How to do that? Fortunately, in Yi2 framework, we may add just with one line of code and it works. I suggest you to have a look at www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0/yidb connection page. $enable schema cache variable. There is documentation on how it works. To cache all tables metadata, we need to add just one line to our config file, to db component. Let's do it. We add that line, save the code. Now we update the same user profile page the first time to store the table metadata in cache. Then update the page a second time. Look at the log and, instead of 3 DB queries, the number has been reduced to 1. This cached metadata is now available for all users, and it will be updated 1 hour later by default. With one line of code, we made our application faster. Incredible! But we can store in cache not only table metadata, but the DB query results as well. How to achieve that? Let's look at www.yeframework.com/doc 2.0 Guide Caching Data. Section Query Caching. As you can see, we can store DB query results in cache if we use some construction with an anonymous function. Let's do that. We add the database component, use its cache function, and in anonymous function, we add $ID variable from parent function as well. And we return the current user model with the user ID, specified in $ID variable. Save this code, update the page. And it works! Great! During the first user request, we store DB query results in cache. And during second request, we just retrieve them from cache, instead of making slow database query again. No query is shown in the log, but you may cache it on your own if you want. That brings us to the end of the first video. In this video, we learned how to cache custom data and get it from cache, how to cache table metadata, and how to cache all DB query results. In the next video, we will see how to work with fragment, page, and HTTP caching. Thank you for your time. In our last video, we learned how to cache data and database query results using some features of Yi2 framework. Let's move on to the second video of this section, i.e., fragmenting, page, and HTTP caching. Besides data and DB query caching, Yi2 framework has strong and useful features to cache already generated pieces of HTML code and even entire pages or HTTP requests. So your page will be sent to client incredibly fast. How to do that? Let's see now. In this video, we will have a look how to store generated fragments of HTML code, how to cache even an entire web page, and how to cache HTTP request on client side. Let's have a look at www.yeframework.com/doc 2.0 Guide Caching Fragment. All details about fragment caching are described here. And now we try to cache user details table on user profile page. How to achieve that? We just need to use functions begin cache and end cache of the current controller. But there is one important note. We need to cache user details table for each user separately. Else, for any user, we will see the same details table. This is inadmissible. Fortunately, Yi2 framework has a simple option to resolve this issue. We just need to specify variations array. This is the array of conditions, when we need to store the cache with a different key. Since we need separate cache value for each user, we add the current user profile ID to variations. So we add these functions to user profile view, and some trace message that we store new value in cache. Save the code and update the page. It works! Let's try profiles of other users. As we see, user details table is displayed correctly for requested user. Indeed. And we have added trace message, which appears only on the first request of any user profile page. Then this user details page is retrieved from cache. But we can cache not only some piece of HTML code, but also the entire HTML page. This will make your web page generation incredibly fast. However, keep in mind that if your page is updated often, you should set a small lifetime for cached data. Please read documentation on the web page www.yeframework.com/doc2.0/guide caching page whenever you get time for further details. Now, let's try to see how it works. We copy the code from documentation page and paste to user controller behaviors function. Then we need to change values only to view, since we cache view action. Add request get parameter ID to variations. We still need to cache page for each user separately. And change the cache dependency so that cache becomes invalid when updated at value of current user is changed, and we need to regenerate the page. Save the code, update the page. And it works. Well done. As we can see in the log, the whole page is retrieved from cache. After the controller action started, we just check updated at value of the current user, and then show the entire cached page to user. Finally, is there any chance to store entire HTML page on client side at all? Fortunately, yes, there is. Let's see what is HTTP caching. This is client-side caching. As you can read on www.yeframework.com/doc2.0/guide caching HTTP. We will use last modified header to enable such caching. Let's copy the respective code and insert it into user controller behaviors function. We need to check HTTP response headers beforehand. Look, there is no last modified header, but it will appear soon. We change the only value to view, since we use HTTP caching only for user profile view page. And we also need to change last modified value so that anonymous function will check the updated at field value of the requested user. Save the code and update the page. Wow, it works! Last modified HTTP header was added to server response. Now the server tells the client something like, "Hey, please use this content until I send you new content and new last modified header." In other words, after that server will return only HTTP status code 304, not modified to client, instead of sending the entire page. Great! That ends the second video. We have achieved all the goals of this video. We have successfully achieved fragment caching, page caching, and HTTP caching techniques. In the next video, we will see how to combine and compress JS and CSS files. See you later. In our last video, we had a look at how to cache HTML fragments and entire HTML page and HTTP caching. Let's go to the third video of this section, i.e. combining and compressing JS and CSS files in HighLoad. When a visitor requests the web page, the server sends him not only HTML files, but also CSS files, JS files, images, etc. If we don't use CDN-like solutions, such files increase server load and traffic. It would be great to minimize such files as much as possible. The Y2 framework allows us to do this and provides even special components for that. In this video, we will have a look at how to configure asset components, how to combine and compress JS and CSS files with third-party scripts, and what is the result. All CSS are merged into one CSS file, and all JS files are merged into one. Let's go to page www.yeframework.com/doc 2.0 Guide Structure Assets. You can find detailed information there on how assets work in Yi 2. Since front-end application is much more loaded than back-end, we will compress and combine JS and CSS files for front-end. To do so, we need to move up onto Using the Asset Command section and run the command yi asset/template assets.php according to the instructions. Then we need to modify it a bit, specify aliases, uncomment some lines, and update the required bundles. OK, now it's ready to work. Note that we need Closure Compiler and UE Compressor third-party scripts to run combination and compression of JS and CSS files. If you don't have such scripts, you need to search and download them and unzip them into the root folder of high-load application. There are both Java files, so if you don't have Java installed on your machine, you need to install it as well. Note that you can use online JS and CSS code minifiers and use minified code on production server. Also note that most shared hostings won't let you run Java files, because there needs to be a Java server, and thus this solution is targeted for users who are using VPSs. And now we are ready to combine and compress our files. How to do that? We just type command in console yi asset assets.php frontend/config/assets_prod.php and press enter. And the script collects all the information, combines JavaScript files, and then compresses them. We now see a few warnings on files compression, but that's not an issue. Compressed JavaScript file has been generated successfully. Then the script combines and compresses all CSS files into one file and generate config file for Asset Manager to use compressed files. We need to include it in our /frontend/config/main.php file. Before we make any changes into /frontend/config/main.php file, let's see what files the browser loads with user profile HTML page. We use Chrome browser, so we press F12 to launch Element Inspector and update the page. Click on the Network tab in Element Inspector, and we see the browser uploads 2 CSS files and 3 JS files. Note that every top browser has its own dev tools, like Firebug in Firefox and DevTools in Internet Explorer or Mozilla. Chrome is not the only option. Now let's include assets_prod.php file to /frontend/config/main.php file to use combined and compressed JS file and CSS file we have just generated. So we add the Asset Manager component to Application Components and use assets_prod.php file to specify its settings. Save the code and update the page. It works! Great! Instead of uploading 5 asset files, we only upload 2 files, one JS and another CSS file. We need only 2 requests now instead of 5. That's amazing! So, the job is completed successfully. We combined and compressed JS and CSS files and configured our web application so that it uses these generated files. This marks the end of the 4th section. In this section, we worked on Cache System, one of the most important systems for high-loaded web application. We cached custom data, DB query results, HTML fragments, entire HTML pages, and HTTP requests. We also combined and compressed JS and CSS files and used them in our web application. In the next section, we will learn additional storages for cache and sessions. Thank you, and see you next time. Hello everyone. In our last section, we learned about how to work with Yi2 framework cache components. Let's move on to the fifth section of this course, i.e., additional storages for cache and sessions. As usual, PHP stores all session data in files. That is absolutely enough for most websites. But if you develop a high-loaded web application, file storage may slow down your application. So you should consider other storages for your session and cache data. In this section, we will look at the most interesting of them. In particular, we will use the database as storage for cache and session data. Then we will take a look at Memcached as storage. And finally, we will try to use Redis as storage for session and cache data. Now, let's have a look at video 5.1, changing high-load session storage to database. Sometimes, if you have a lot of visitors for your web application, you need to add more front-end servers to your hardware configuration. Thus, you need some shared storage for sessions and cache. Files is not the choice anymore. However, our database will help us to resolve this problem. You can configure your database as shared storage for front-end servers. You don't need to install other software to your servers. All that we need is already installed. So, what should we do? Fortunately, with Yi2 framework components, we can move sessions and cache storages to databases with just a few lines of code. We'll create table for sessions in the database and configure our web application to use it. Then, we'll create a table for cache data and change configs to use it. After that, we'll update our page and the job is done. Let's have a look at www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0 Yi Web DB session. Here is Yi2 component, which will perform the magic of using database as storage for sessions. Feel free to read all the details if you need anything specific. First of all, we need to create a table in our database manually. Using the provided SQL code, see $session table property. Let's do that. We copy it, paste it into SQL text field, and click the Go button. Great. Now we need to change configuration of session component to DB session to use the database as session storage. Copy the required code on the web page and paste it into the config file. Yes, that is all we need to do to move our sessions to database. Moving cache storage to database is very similar to what we did just now. All we need is described at www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0 Yi caching DB cache web page. Do have a look at all the details. At the very beginning, we need to create a table for cache in our database manually. So, we copy the SQL code at the web page, see $cache table property, and paste it into SQL text field, then press the Go button. Cool, exactly what we need. And now, to move cache storage to the database, we need to change only a few code lines in config file. We change file cache to dbcache, class name for cache component. That's amazing. Save the code. Now let's refresh our user profile page and have a look at the logs. All the session data and cache is stored in the database now. Well done. We have 57 items in the log, and 39 queries to the database instead of 4 beforehand. But if we update the page again, we will see just 10 queries. Now our cache and sessions can be shared between several front-end servers, and our high-load web application is more stable. The job is done successfully. Well, that's all for this video. In this video, we moved storage sessions and cache to the database and checked how the web application works now. In the next video, we will see how to move sessions and cache storage to Memcached. See you soon. Welcome back. In our last video, we moved the session and cache storage to database. Now, we will try another storage for sessions and cache, called Memcached. We have a lot of advantages when we store cache and sessions in database. But at the same time, we are stuck with one significant issue. Each DB query takes some time and may slow down our Yi2 web application. We may avoid such problems by using the Memcached storage to save cache and sessions. Memcached storage uses the memory to save the data, so each request to Memcached is very fast. It can also be shared between several front-end servers as well as the database. In particular, in this video, we have a look at how to move cache storage to Memcached. Then, we need to move the session's storage to Memcached. Finally, we will refresh the page and see the results. Let's move on to the web page www.yiframework.com/doc2.0 Yi caching Memcache. You can find all the information there about Yi2 framework component Memcache, which does the job of using Memcache as storage for cache. There are many parameters which show how to configure it for various environments. But if we have a typical configuration, we don't need to specify them. We also don't need to create any special tables as in the previous video. All we need to change is just the component name. And that's it. So instead of dbcache, we type memcache. And the cache data has been moved to Memcache storage. Incredible! But what do we do if we need to store the session data in Memcached as well? No worries. Yi2 framework helps us to do so. Let's open the page www.yiframework.com/doc2.0/Yi web cache session. Here is the solution of our problem. Cache session component manages the work with cache storage for sessions. In our case, it's Memcached, of course. So all we need to change is just the component name from DB session to cache session for session component class. The same job could take several days or even weeks if we wrote our web application in pure PHP. But fortunately, we use Yi2 framework. Change the session component class name from DB session to cache session. Save the code and update the page. Great! Works like a charm. The amount of DB queries has been reduced to 0. We don't have DB queries at all. This brings us to the end of this video. We have achieved the goal of this video. We have moved cache storage to Memcached. Then we replaced session data to the same storage as well. Thanks to Yi2 framework, we did it by typing a few words. Finally, we have updated the web page and it works. In the next video, we'll use the Redis storage to save the cache and store the session. Thank you for your attention. In our last video, we used Memcached storage to save the session and cache data. Now we'll have a look at Redis as one of the most powerful storages for sessions and cache. Memcached gives us significant benefits if we use it as storage for cache and session data. It is very fast and can be shared between several servers. However, there is one big issue. We can lose all the data in Memcached storage if the server breaks down. This is not a problem for cache. We can regenerate all the cache data, but users' sessions may contain important information we can't miss. So, what should we do? Fortunately, Redis storage will help us to solve this glitch. You can configure your Redis server to copy all the data from memory to the disk, so that all the data can be restored even after server faults. Even more, Redis is very fast and can share data with several front-end servers along with Memcached. In this video, we will have a look at how to use Redis as cache storage, then what we should do to move the session storage to Redis, and after that, we refresh the web page and see the results. First of all, if you haven't installed Redis software on your machine, you need to do it. And since the Yi2 Redis component is not installed in the advanced template, we need to install them manually using Composer. Please have a look at the web page www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0 ext redis index. You can find the Composer command to install Yi2 Redis components. And now let's move our cache storage to Redis. Open the page www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0 Yi Redis cache for further details. Let's copy the settings for Redis cache components and paste them into our config file. That's it. With just copying and pasting the code, we have replaced our cache storage to Redis. Isn't that amazing? But how to save the sessions in Redis as well? Let's go to www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0/Yi Redis session. All we need is to copy the settings from the web page and paste them into our config file. Save the code and update the page. Wow, it works! Redis now stores session and cache data, and you can see that in the log. All the Redis get and set commands are described here. Now you can configure Redis to save important data from the memory to the hard disk if you want. We have successfully completed all the tasks in this video. We moved the cache storage and replaced our session storage to Redis. Finally, we updated our high-load web page and we can see that it works. Well, this ends our section. In this section, we saved our sessions and cache in different storages: database, Memcached, and Redis. Each of them has its own weak and strong sides, so you may choose one of them to best fit your needs. In the next section, we'll learn some full-text search engines for high-load web application. See you later. Hello guys, welcome back. In our last section, we learned how to work with Y2 components to move cache and session data to different storages. And now let's have a look at the sixth section of this course, i.e. full-text search. Each web application receives a lot of data from users and other websites. Some information is stored in database, and sometime later your database size will grow to gigabytes or even terabytes. And all this data should be easily accessible. Our visitors can't wait several minutes until the server finds the requested data. Despite the fact that some relational databases have their own full-text search feature, it is better to reduce the load on the databases. We can use specialized third-party software to index all the data and find the desired data among our terabytes of data in a flash. In this section, we will consider some of the most popular softwares for full-text search: Sphinx, Elasticsearch, and MongoDB. What is interesting is that the Y2 framework has its own components to support each of these engines. And now, let's move on to the video 6.1, Sphinx and Y2 related components. Sphinx is a full-text search engine which creates indexes using your database and your specific settings, then stores generated data in files, and then makes full-text search using generated files. So Sphinx allows us to reduce database server load and provides a very fast full-text search. Even more, Y2 framework has its own components to use Sphinx, as this is a usual active record model. Also, Sphinx has a great documentation and it's easy to install. Note that if you have not installed Sphinx, you will need to do that and create indexes of your own according to the instructions. In this video, we will install Y2 Sphinx components and then configure high-load application to use Sphinx storage for full-text search and try to perform this search. Please read the page www.yframework.com/doc2.0/ext Sphinx index. The Y2 Sphinx components are described here, which allow us to make quick full-text search. You can have a look at all the details on your own. Now, let's install Y2 Sphinx component. To do that, you need to copy the Composer install command and paste it into your console. Press Enter and wait for the Y2 Sphinx component to be installed. During the installation process, we can update our config file to specify different options for Y2 Sphinx component. How to do that? We just need to copy the text on the same page and paste it into the config file. That's it! Great! Let's assume that previously we had created post table with two fields. ID integer type field and body text type field. Then we have used the Gutenberg Encyclopedia to fill the post table. And as a result, we got about 25,000 rows in post table. We have various strings in the table. There are a few empty strings and a lot of strings, about 3,000 symbols. We will use this table for full text search. Note that for full text search, you need to index the post table and start searched Sphinx daemon. You can update it a bit. Copy to your Sphinx folder and use sphinx.conf file placed in the config folder. Also, let's consider that we have created the usual post model to work with DB table. Then Sphinx post model, which provides full text search with Sphinx. Also, we have created a post controller and the respective view files for CRUD operations. We have added keyword field in post index page to search matches with the given keyword. And now we are ready to run the search. Let's open the highload/index.php web page and type any word. Then click Submit button and we get the results in a few seconds. Sphinx makes full text search for us extremely quick. It is about 10 times faster than the usual DB search. At the same time, the database is not involved in the full text search, so it is free for other tasks. Incredible! We have now come to the end of this first video. In this video, we installed and configured Yi2 Sphinx components and tried to work with Sphinx and previously developed features. And it works like a charm. In the next video, we will see how to use Elasticsearch engine for full text search. See you soon. In our last video, we had a look at Sphinx full text search engine. And now let's move on to the next video, i.e. Elasticsearch and Yi2 related components. Elasticsearch is a full text search engine, similar to Sphinx. But Elasticsearch is schema-free, which allows us to store rows with different field sets in the same table. It has different names for its entities, unlike the relational database. So database is called as index in Elasticsearch, table is called as type, row is document, and so on, as specified in the Elasticsearch glossary. It has RESTful HTTP JSON API, so it is very clear and easy to understand. Also, Elasticsearch has been written in Java, so before installing Elasticsearch, you need to install Java. Most likely, you won't be able to install Java on served hosting, and thus you need a VPS at least. In particular, in this video, we will have a look at how to install Yi2 Elasticsearch components, how to configure our file, and finally, update the page and see the results. Please load the page yi2framework.com/doc 2.0 ext Elasticsearch index. Here, you can find the instructions on how to install Yi2 Elasticsearch components into our high-load application. How to do that? It's easy with Composer. To install the components, we just need to copy the Composer install command and paste it into the command line. That's it. It can take some time to install Elasticsearch components, so in the meanwhile, let's add Elasticsearch config options into our config file. How to do that? Simple. We have to follow the same steps that we followed in the previous video. Copy the config and paste it to the application main config file. Cool. Also, change the IP and save the code. Now, let's check how things are going with the installation of Yi2 Elasticsearch components. Everything is okay here. All the desired components have been installed. Let's consider that previously we developed Elasticsearch Post model, the child class of Elasticsearch Active Record, and in Post Controller we have switched to it. Elasticsearch Post model is similar to Sphinx Post model, and it has the same methods. However, Elasticsearch Post model uses the Elasticsearch engine, and the function getResult has been changed appropriately, according to Elasticsearch requirements. We also need to run Elasticsearch Service for Windows. Great, it works. And now we are ready to use Elasticsearch for full text search. Let's update our page. But there are no posts in our grid. Why? The thing is, we need to insert all the data for quick search into Elasticsearch storage. Let's assume that previously we have created function postController : action load data, which clones our post table to Elasticsearch storage, row by row. Now, let's call this action with a URL request. It will take some time, maybe even several minutes, because the full-text search engines are designed for quick search, but not for quick updates of dataset. Note that you probably need to change the PHP configuration. If the execution of this route dies during the maximum time limit given to execute a PHP script. And that's it. So, we have inserted 25,000 documents into our Elasticsearch storage. Let's update our post index page once again. It works! All the inserted rows or documents in Elasticsearch terms appear in our grid. Now we are ready for full text search with Elasticsearch. Let's type any word you like into the keyword text field and press the Submit button. A few moments and we get the results. Quick text search across a ton of data. We saw how easy it is with Elasticsearch and related Yi2 framework components. In this video, we have learned how to install Yi2 Elasticsearch components to our application, how to update configuration files to use Elasticsearch, and, finally, how to get things done. In the next video, we will learn how to use full text search in MongoDB storage. See you soon. In the previous video, we used Elasticsearch engine for full text search. In this video, we learn how to make full text search with MongoDB storage. Unlike Elasticsearch and Sphinx, MongoDB is not a full text search engine. It is a NoSQL document-oriented database, but it has great full-text features as well. By the way, using MongoDB might be preferable for frequently changed data, since its indexes are always up to date. Thanks to Yi2 MongoDB components, we can write the code for MongoDB as if it is a usual relational database. If you have not installed MongoDB to your machine, please refer to this page, www.mongodb.org/downloads. In this video, we will learn to add Yi2 MongoDB components to HighLoad. Then, we will update the application config file, and finally, we will update some more code, refresh the page, and see how it works. Let's move on to the page www.yiframework.com/doc 2.0 ext MongoDB index. You can find all the information about Yi2 MongoDB components here. So let's install all these components to our high-load application. We just need to copy the composer command to the console command line and press enter. It can take some time to download and install all the required components. Let's not wait for that. We can update our main config file with MongoDB details in the meantime. So, we copy it and paste it into our config file. Let's update the user credentials. Note that after you have installed, configured and launched your MongoDB server, you need to create a high-load database and add some user to it according to the MongoDB instructions. After that, you need to update the MongoDB connection string in main config file to connect to high-load database successfully. Let's return to our console to check what's going on there. As we can see, all the Yi2 MongoDB components have been installed properly. Now our high-load application is ready to work with MongoDB. Great! We assume that previously we have updated post-controller code to use the MongoDB model instead of Elasticsearch model in the functions action index and action load data. How to do that? We just need to change the model class. When we create the model from Elasticsearch Post to Mongo Post. Since both of them have inherited from base active record model, we don't need to change anything in Post Controller. This is the great power of Yi2 framework. Model Mongo Post has been created beforehand. It is very similar to the Elasticsearch Post model, except for the full text search. Mongo Post search is launched with like keyword, similar to the active record model for relational database. We also use the post index view from the previous video. So let's refresh the post index page. There are no results in the grid. Obviously, because we have not added any row to our high-load database in MongoDB. Now, how to insert data into Mongo database? Well, we can change the Elasticsearch Post model to Mongo Post model in Post Controller, action load data function, and all the data will be inserted into MongoDB storage instead of Elasticsearch. Simple. Let's start loading the data. Please note that this process may take some time on your machine. Now, we need to update the post index page. It works. All the data has been loaded into MongoDB storage. And finally, we need to try full text search with MongoDB. The main goal of this video. Let's type some word in text field. Press Submit button. It has found this word across tons of data in a flash. This is amazing. Congratulations! We have now reached the end of the section. In this section, we have tried to make full text search across 25,000 long strings with Sphinx and Elasticsearch full text search engines and MongoDB no SQL storage. We have completed all tasks successfully. In the next section, we will learn what test-driven development is and how to run tests with Codeception. Thank you for watching. Hello guys. In our last section, we added full text search to our application using specialized software and related Yi2 components. And now let's have a look at the 7th section of this course, i.e. testing with Codeception. All of us test freshly developed code to be completely assured that the entire web application works fine and that we have not affected any other part. We need to also test all the previously developed code as well. The more complex and larger our application becomes, the more and more testing it demands. Some companies can afford to hire testing teams to do this job. But if you can't, you need to get things done on your own. Have you ever been annoyed with such monotonous and boring tasks? I think yes, we all have. But now, with Codeception and related Yi2 components, we can write these tests only once, run them, grab a coffee, and watch the testing process as if watching a video. From now on, Codeception and Yi2 framework will do this boring job for us. In this section, we will learn how to install and configure Codeception and the Yi2 components, how to create and run unit and functional tests. Two most widely used types of tests. Fortunately, Yi2 framework helps a lot in carrying out these tests. Let's move on to the video 7.1, Installing and Configuring Test Components. Codeception PHP testing framework allows us to run our tests and make web application testing automatic. Yes, it takes additional time to write tests, but in the future you can save this time on multiple instances. You'll be able to sleep well and know that all the parts of your application, all the features that you've covered with tests, work well. Of course, automated tests will not guarantee that your website works 100% as it is designed to. We can't foresee all possible scenarios and situations, but if you cover the most important application use cases with tests, you can be sure that at least these covered parts work as expected. In this video, we will learn how to install Yi2 Codeception components and Codeception PHP testing framework, how to configure it, and then how to run tests. Let's move to the page www.yiframework.com/doc2.0/ext Codeception index. This is the page where you can learn how to install Yi2 Codeception components. How to do it. We just need to copy the command from the page, paste it into the console command line, and press enter. It takes some time to download and install the components, so in the meantime, let's install Codeception framework. The simplest way to do it is to download .far file at codeception.com/install and copy it to the test application folder. Since we're testing the front end of the application, we need to move codeception.far file to /tests/codeception/frontend folder. Note that if you use Codeception version 2.1 or above, it requires PHP 5.5 or above. So copy this file to the destination folder. Let's have a look if the Yi2 Codeception components were installed. Yes, everything is okay here. Now, we need to configure our installed components. Such configuration is not an easy job, but this video will help you. First of all, let's move to the front-end testing folder with the command cd tests/codeception/frontend, and then type the command php codecept.far. Now we see all the Codeception console commands. Before we start testing, we need to build the testing environment in the front-end test folder. Let's do it with command php codecept.far build. a new _support folder has been created in the front-end tests folder. As you have noted, the Yi2 Advanced template also provides simple tests. So let's try to run these tests with the command php codecept.var run. Codeception tells us that we need to configure our database. We can do it in the file /tests/codeception/config/config.php. So here it is. And now specify the database name highload there. Save the code. Note that if you get an exception with undefined function expect, you need to install, specify and verify tools as well. You can see all the details on the page codeception.com/1004/2013/specification PHP unit. Let's try to run the tests again. Now we see a new error. Couldn't connect to localhost :8080. Please check if the web server is running. This means we need to configure PHP Browser for acceptance tests as well. We need to change the PHP Browser URL setting to http://highload in acceptance.suite.yml file. We also need to update test entry URL setting to localhost/index-test.php in codeception.yml file. In the same folder. All these settings are according to the settings of our local domain name and domain index test file. Save the updates and run the tests again. Nice! Now we only have 2 failures. Why? The thing is, we changed a bit of our homepage beforehand when we worked on permissions. We changed the About link to Permissions link. So let's update 2 tests which fail. Save the code and run the tests again. Great, it works. All the tests pass. In this video, we have installed and configured testing environment for the front end of our highload web application. All the tests pass. In the next video, we learn how to write unit tests for highload. See you soon. In our last video, we learned how to install and configure Codeception components in our Yi2 framework web application. Let's move further to the second video in this section, i.e. testing highload with unit tests. Actually, Codeception has 3 layers of tests: acceptance, functional, and unit tests. Acceptance tests are about testing the user stories. Functional tests are testing software design and technical details. Unit tests help us to test the smallest units of our web application separately. Unit tests help design the code better. We will talk about unit tests in this video. Fortunately, Codeception and the related Yi2 components make this job as easy as possible. Note that since your tests may update something in your database, you need to have a completely separate database to run the tests. In this video, we will explore one unit test file, provided with Yi2 Advanced template. Then we will write our own test for post model, and finally we will run all tests and see how they work. Let's move on to the page codeception.com/docs/05 unit tests. All you need to know about unit tests with Codeception is placed here. Feel free to go through this page if you want to get into a little more details. Fortunately, developers of Yi2 Advanced template have also provided great unit test files. So it's much easier for beginners to understand how unit testing works. And now we open one unit test file and explore it a bit. All unit test files are placed into codeception/frontend/unit/models folder. Let's choose the contact form test.php file. Note that all conventions for file names, function names are the same as for unit testing with PHP unit. The first functions that we see are setup and tear down. They are called before and after each unit test in this file respectively. We configure mailer in these two functions. Now let's have a look at function test contact. We create a new contact message and try to send it. Note that there is a function specify. It creates logical blocks for tests. So that if any test in the specify block fails, Codeception just moves to the next block and the next test functions. Also, the function specify allows us to leave small details about what we want to do in this block and keep all the instances isolated. Any change of variable inside the specify block does not affect the variable outside. The next interesting function is expect. It is a small wrapper for various assert functions, which makes the coding of our tests much more readable. The next important thing in unit tests is the fixtures class. This is a special class to place some data in a global array and work with it during tests. Let's open reset password form test.php file and see how it's used. There is an overridden method, fixtures, and the path to the user fixtures is specified here. After that, we can use fixtures in the code as an array. And now, let's create a new simple unit test for post model. How? We can just use one existing file, copy it to the same folder with posttest.php, change the class name to posttest, and now we can start writing our own tests. For post unit test, we also need to post fixtures. So we have created it similar to user fixtures. Note that post fixtures will clear the respective table, so you may clone post data to the other table. We have added two simple tests to assure whether the new post model is saved to the post database table successfully, and then we test that the post model with the integer value of the body field shouldn't be saved to the post table. And now let's save our new files and run the test as before. Great, it works. Our new unit tests for post model were automatically included to the test list, and all our tests have passed. Everything we need works like a charm. In this video, we studied what is unit testing and we analysed previously developed unit tests in Yi2 Advanced template. We have also developed our own tests for post model, and finally, we ran tests and they work. In the next video, we will have a look at how to write functional tests for high load. In our previous video, we had a look at how to write unit tests for high load application. And now we'll see the third video of this section, i.e. testing high load with functional tests. Besides unit tests, Codeception framework also has acceptance tests and functional tests. Acceptance tests help us to use test user stories. They know nothing about technical details of our code. Functional tests are similar to acceptance tests, but they can make database queries or check some other details in our code. Thankfully, Codeception and Yi2 components allow us to create functional tests incredibly easily. In this video, we will look at the code of functional tests developed beforehand by authors of Yi2 Advanced template. Then we will write our own functional tests for post index page, and finally we will run all the tests and make them work. We will discuss some external references after that. Please have a look at page codeception.com/docs/modules/Yi2. There is information on how to use Codeception and how to write functional tests with the Yi2 framework. Please read it if you need to know more details. And now, let's perform a functional test on signup_sest.php. Placed in the functional folder, which is in the front-end test folder. This is the functional test that checks if everything works as expected during user registration. Functions before and after are called before and after each functional test, even if the current test fails. Also, there is a function fail, which is called when the current test fails. Now, we will have a look at the test for the function test user signup. Note that Codeception helps us a lot to make tests as readable as possible. There are functions which allow adding some explanation to tests and even generate scenarios for tests. So, in our current test, we need to ensure whether signup page works correctly. We open the page and then check if the header sign up and the text "Please fill out the following fields to sign up" is present on the provided page. We then try to submit an empty sign up form and see that 3 validation errors appear. After that, we submit the same form with the correct user data, except email, and assure that we now don't have username and password validation errors, but instead have one validation error about the wrong email. Finally, we try to submit the user sign-up form with a fully correct user data. Then assure that the new user record has been inserted into the user table in the database, and check whether the user is logged in, and then he can see a link with the words logout tester. And that's it. And now we will try to create our own functional test for the post index page. How to do that? We just copy the home-serpt.php file from the functional test folder to the same folder with a new file name. Let's call it post-sept.php. Note that post-sept.php file does not have a class-like structure. That is just an easy way to write functional tests with Codeception. In this test, we need to ensure that the post index page works properly. We open the page and check if the post header, the create post link, and the keyword label are present in the page. We don't need to click on the permissions link now. So we just comment it out. Great. Let's run our tests. It works. That's amazing. We don't need to check each page for our high-load application anymore. Codeception and the Y2 framework will do the job for us. All we need to do is add similar tests to each page to ensure that they work properly. We then looked at some of the resources that helped me. You can find all of them in the previous videos, but I would also like to mention these links: y2framework.com/doc2.0/index, the Y2 framework documentation, github.com/ysoft/y2, the repository with Y2 framework source code. I call you to look at the source code of Y2 framework. It will help you to understand the framework better and keep up the great quality of your code. In this section, we have installed and configured Codeception and related Y2 components. We have explored and created unit tests, and we have also learned and wrote functional tests. Well done! You have watched the last video in this course. I hope that you enjoyed it and our efforts helped you. The world of programming is extremely interesting and creative. I wish that you achieve great feats. Thank you for watching and good luck.